Very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in the world. And first of all, hope you are keeping safe and you and your families are doing well during these tough times. And the sort of love and affection that you are sharing with us, by volunteering your time, it really means a lot to us. It shows that how you really want to be committed to take forward the work that we are doing here and to amplify our efforts. So really means a lot, and truly happy to be part of this GHE family. Now the call to action, and if you actually look at this picture, it actually symbolizes that it's a shepherd calling out to all the Pashmina goats. So more like a call to action, sort of a pictorial in terms of creating some tangible impact. And So I'll just move on the next slide. So we have the agenda broadly structured into 4 areas. First, we'll go through the alumni responses to give you an idea of how many people responded, what were the key thematics. And what we did was we analyzed the Google form surveys that you all filled up. And based on the survey, we sort of have developed a few projects that we have. And again, acquiring, based on your strengths and your skill sets and where you would like to wish to volunteer. And then what we'll do is we'll have a team-wise formation for the alumni engagement, so that every alumni is working on certain thematics that are of their core interest. And then additionally, every project will have a SPOC from GHE, a single point of contact, who will be taking that project forward. Now, the projects have been chosen in a manner that we have not tried to take up anything new, in the sense that we have not looked at, hey, let's open up a new geography, or let's, try some new expeditions. But our idea has been everyone has been and part of electrification of a village. Now, what next? So once the village is electrified, the next step, as we've all shared with you, is the idea of developing homestays and creating revenue generation for these communities, because it's not just about the light bulb, but how can that light bulb lead to the economic advancement of these communities. So that has always been the core value. And so what we've been doing is, once the villages are electrified, set up homestays, and then promote income generation for these communities, and also making them much more resilient towards any crisis that comes along, and also ensuring that we are making these villages smarter, so that the people don't have to migrate to the towns in search of livelihood opportunities, in terms of in search of access. And so based on that, and just sort of quickly covering the alumni response, and then I'll just hand it over to Paras to take it forward. So we had 6 Europeans, 12 Asians, and 7 people from US who had filled in the Google Forms in terms of being wanting to be part of this project. And broadly, the interests were mainly around creating village resources plan, and support in creating village information dissemination. So these were the broad area of interest that that came out. And there were some specific comments around translation of languages, visual data analytics, and market research. So based on these thematics, and based on the form that you filled up, we have some projects that we like to share with you. And again, with the core theme that we look at how can we empower the communities that already have access to energy through the expeditions. Paras, over to you.
Thanks, Jaydeep. So you keep toggling the slides. So the first one, the beautiful picture which you see here, and Gagan is also on the call. Can you go to the first one, Jaydeep?
Sorry, yeah.
The Mountain Homestays project, which you already know that we already have initiative called Mountain Homestays. So we thought let's start with that, because this is the one which keeps us engaged with the communities once we electrify these villages. Now, I think it's more than a couple of years that this project has been in action, but we haven't been able to promote this project or take it further, because we feel that the focus has always been on the expeditions and the other projects of development. But lately, what we have seen is that these communities are the ones which would probably have once the travelers start moving in, and the amount of interest we are seeing right now, it's basically towards these indigenous communities because they feel they are remote, so probably they're isolated, so they will be virus free, which is good because this also provides them with income, and it's very important for them to be on the map so that people can find them easily and visit them as well, which also puts a very important question mark on their vulnerability. So if the villages are not so strengthened enough, then they have a big chance of getting infected of any infection. Could be COVID or could be anything else. So one is to try and get these communities on the map, and second is try and strengthen them. So we have taken both these options together. And what we are speaking right now is something, as Jaideep was mentioning, we are already working on this project. We have a few, colleges and a few universities who are working on research project on the similar project we're talking about. I'll just take the leap here. Hemi, who's on the call as well, who's doing his project in one of the MBA schools in Europe, is also designing a marketing plan around something what we're seeing today. So the mountain homestays projects, next slide, Jaideep. Just want to give you an update where we currently are. So we have currently set up more than 50 unique homestays, which means 50 unique rooms over the last 3 years. And this is across 21 villages. And what we have seen is that 70% of the income which is generated through this project comes back to the community. We have tried to publicize this on multiple online platforms like Airbnb and Booking.com. And we have been always trying to measure the impact that every traveler is trying to, create on these communities. So we are trying to measure as much as we can. It could be an income level, it could be the happiness the homestay owner gets, it could be the amount of skills or the amount of handicrafts sold by the villagers, and also the facilities which are being provided to the village on the ongoing basis. At our end, we have been training them on quality standards. So internally, GHE has created a homestay module, a training module. Okay, that's Italian, I believe. So if we can mute, would be great. And so yeah, so we are training these things, and just for our information, we have just signed up a small MOU with Taj, which is one of the biggest brands in hotel and hospitality in India and across the world, on training these homestay owners on different gastronomy, cuisines, and how do you actually, fold the bed sheet and put the towels in the washroom. So yeah, trying to get them to that level because that also improves the quality standards in these homestays. And at the end of the day, these areas are epitome of sustainable lifestyles. I mean, we shared last time when everyone is locked down, these guys are really enjoying themselves. Not that they don't enjoy earlier, they're also continuing as they were. Farming season has started. Water has started melting. Some festivals, so they have no scare as of now because the immunity levels are extremely high in these areas, and there is nothing on terms of contamination. Next slide. So what we actually need in terms of support from your end, and what we'll do is, if this is self-explanatory, if you see here, so we've just put this across in a brainstorming session. Is first of all, if you ask me, we want to see how can we put this across to the world. So we do write a lot of blogs, but we are not aware of in terms of where are the blogs which needs to be published as. For example, we recently got to know there's a magazine called Condé Nast. We never heard about it earlier. So it is just the 5 of us who have information. We write articles. They either go on a LinkedIn or on our newsletter, which you get. So one support we need is try and identify us, the online travel portals or online publishing blogs or online sustainable journalists who may be interested in writing stories about us. So we just need some information on that form. So this is very preliminary I'm talking about, and then once we decide which person goes in which project based on your interest, then we can in depth talk about the frameworks we're talking about. Again, as I mentioned to you, we are doing some research projects with some of the universities mainly who are working on tourism research on how are these sustainable development goals and the homestays practices are combined together. So we have never actually written a concept note or a point of view of these homestays. They are normally seen on these websites as more of a commercial property for accommodations. But there's more to it. It's an experience one gets and some learnings one takes back. So I think that point of view concept note needs to be written together. And I think from our end, because it is part of our daily life in our job, so we never think about it. But someone like you, who have been to Ladakh and have seen them and observed them and written blogs, it would be great if you could help us, create a one specific point of view of why these communities are so resilient and what are they practicing are actually, in actual, they are doing what they call the Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations. Of course, we are looking at market linkage. So what are the options to collaborate? And this is something, we tried coming to the ITB Berlin this year in March, which got the biggest travel show, which got postponed. But if there are any market linkages through your connects, informal, formal, would be great to know. Secondly, the most important point, which needs to go on the top basically, but it's not there on the top, it's the fourth point. It's called the business planning. So we have always been discussing how should the homestays model work. One is, go to the website, subscribe to it, take a homestay, come in, pay it, done. Second could be we're looking at a membership model. If you have enough homestays on our website, then the person just, if he's a member, he can have access and he can directly go to the community and pay directly to the community. So this becomes a fair trade model. But that requires a lot of homestays to come on board. So we're trying to, understand what would attract a tourist or a traveler more than what the current model is. So, some brains on project management, which I think 90% of the people in this group told they like to do project management. So would like to see if there's some kind of business modeling which can come in this place. Of course, I think Rolf Harrington is not on the call. I remember specifically he mentioning any kind of translation. A lot of people who come to us, they write in their own languages on our email IDs, and it's difficult to translate sometimes. But we do communicate thanks to Google Translate. But it would be great to have some of the very highlighting experiences translated into 3 languages: Spanish, French, and German. We can do it on through Google Translate, but I still feel it doesn't convert in the exact manner it should be. So if anyone is interested, then we can just share the translated version. We can just refine it so that it doesn't look funny to the person who's coming from that country. Someone who's from UK or someone who's really good in English, we would need support in proofreading of blogs, and this is being very open and transparent in communicating to you. I think we have been writing a lot of lovely content, but a lot of things don't go online because we feel that we need to have a copywriter or a proofreading for that. So if anyone would love to read these blogs and like reviewing them and doing the track change as a part of his daily job rather than something of his company, if he wants to just read about Himalayas, we're happy to share, and that would be really nice. I mean, that will just help us put these blogs as often as we can. One of the interesting things which has come across this thing is a lot of travelers have come to us asking for homestays in Kazakhstan, in Bolivia, in Ethiopia, in Kenya. We don't have homestays there, but there are homestays there. There's not a single model of community tourism which gives access to all the homestays around the globe. So one thought was try and research on these homestays around the world and probably help us with data so that we can approach these different homestay owners and get them on a single platform. Again, if it becomes a membership model, then it becomes a fair trade model and they get a great expansion. Because even if you look at Airbnb or Booking.com, which are the 2 leaders right now, hotels is something which are normally booked through them, but no one looks at homestays. Basically, no one wants to go to homestays as of now because they feel they lack facilities. So if we have a framework which suffices the homestays model, I think it would be great in terms of quality if we can, expand these into different areas around the world. And then, of course, lastly, if there's an expert here in these 22 people who knows a bit of SEO and how to increase the website ranking, would be great. Because I don't know if you saw the messages on the GHE Alumni WhatsApp group. I just recently posted that we are going to speak on Monday, and this is being told by the Ministry of Tourism of India on Ladakh for 1 hour. And they normally have 5,000 people coming on that webinar every day. That's happening every day since the lockdown. And the last thing you would want is people search and they don't get anything because we are not there on the first page of Google. So how do you increase that ranking? So this is where we need actually help. Would be great to know from you, just a raise of hands, if there's something called raise hands, who would be interested in being part of this project. Of course, we'll send you a Google form after this call, but a raise of hand, if anyone is interested in any of these things, then we'd like to touch base with them and then, collaborate and see if what your expertise can bring in. So raise of hand now would be really nice if anyone is interested in any of these things. Okay, Sylvia, thank you. And that's it. Okay.
I'm trying to figure. This is Vikrant. I'm trying to figure out how to raise a hand, but.
Okay, so that's Vikrant. There's something called at the end, at the bottom. There's something called mute me or raise hand, where everyone's name is listed. But that's fine. If you can't figure it out, we're going to have a raise. We're going to send you a Google form. Post this immediately. Post this call so that you can just mention where you want to come in. But yeah, we're getting it on the chat, which is fine. Thank you. Just wanted to get an idea. So 2 is good enough. And again, this is just what we require right now. There is many more things you can do on this, but we need to see the limitation that you are sitting at your home and we are sitting at our home, and whatever we can do online right now would help these communities move in. So that's the Mountain Homestays project. Now, if you go further, anyone has any questions? It's a small group, so unmute yourself, and you can ask me or ask the team. Any specific question on the Mountain Homestays project? Okay. I think someone is trying to speak, but that's fine. Okay, we go to the next one. Unlock Ladakh, Museum of Ancient, what is this? Okay, my screen, Ancient Futures. Vishal, do you want to speak?
Okay. Hello, everyone. Since Paris has introduced myself, I'll start with directly with the project. The project is Unlock the Dark Museum of Ancient Future. The idea here is to, I guess someone's on mute. Okay. So the idea here is to preserve the culture, the heritage of Ladakh, which is available in abundance throughout regions of Ladakh, in those remote villages, but is not preserved because the people around don't know how to preserve it, and it's something that has been missing. That we as people from outside of Ladakh are missing an opportunity of having to see what their culture was, see what the heritage was, and how these people have been resilient enough since the beginning of times, and are thriving 6 months without any contact with the outside world, right? So the idea here is that we want to start up with a couple of we want to pilot some projects where we are identifying a couple of locations where we can set up these museums, and these museums are then going to hold these museums are then going to have the heritage artifacts, maybe some local scrolls, local folklore, traditional clothings, anything of that sorts that can probably bring that culture back to life, and also create an opportunity for livelihood for the community as part of the sustainable development around the community. So where we are currently is we are in the initial stage of planning, of identifying locations. So what we've done is we've looked at a couple of locations throughout Ladakh which we feel are promising and which we feel are very rich in heritage. Although the whole of Ladakh is rich in heritage, but these particular locations, I believe that we as a team right now believe that these are the ones that are very promising because of the tourist interaction they already have, and then if some support is provided to these communities, they can probably come up with a new way, a new vertical of livelihood, which will be good for the community. The second point is designing. This is going to be the model of operation. We are yet thinking on how to make this a community-driven, community-benefited model. So this is what we're doing currently, and we're also simultaneously working on collection of artifacts for the museum. So we have a team based out of Ladakh, which is currently even in this lockdown in the regions where they can move around, which are those remote villages. They are looking at artifacts. We get pictures every day. We get information every day about what's what and what is the significance of a particular object, which tells one particular part of the history of their culture. The next part is going to be that we're now working on the marketing plan, local and online both. So you can create some, just like Paras was saying, we have mountain homestays up and running for the past 2.5 years, but since we don't have the outreach yet, because we're not pro in that area, we are still looking at the marketing plan for museums as well, how to promote it and how to make it effective in terms of getting the attention of the tourists and getting the footfall that it deserves. The next part, which is probably going to be the biggest challenge, is going to be the one of the bigger challenges is going to be fundraising for these initial locations, because it's a pilot project. We are looking at how to get these up and running. And the last is going to be the technology requirements. We're looking at what all in what all creative ways can we make these museums interactive, innovative, and sustainable. JD, can you move on to the next one? Okay, so this is where you guys come into place as well. This is what we need to do. So what we are trying to do is, as I shared, we have folks who are on ground doing research at their end. But what we need is we need research done online based upon the areas, specific areas such as Changtang and Silk Route. And this will have to be an online research done entirely based on journals, research papers that have been written in the past about Ladakh. And the next is going to be the capturing and mapping of chronology of events. So as we move down, as we gather facts and as we gather dates, and the next step is going to be mapping the chronology of these events and figuring out a way to present them into the museum. Collection of pictures depicting the culture. These are going to be old pictures that we can find, or some references that we can find online related to the artifacts or to the specific objects that we choose to portray in the museum. And it's going to be about although we do have some photographs of the objects in person, but what we're looking for is depictions that can be found online in an artistic way, which present the culture in a more appealing way. Next is going to be the museum aesthetics and design. So we were just having this discussion yesterday as well, and we were looking at a couple of museums abroad in Paris. And so what we are looking for is designs that are nature friendly, are community friendly, are sustainable, and are innovative at the same time. So we want to make this as benchmark for museums in remote locations. That is what we are aiming for. Again, technology, lights, audio games, online voiceovers. So if you want to, as it comes down to the same point, if we are going online with the museums, we're going to want to up our game by introducing different modes of interaction on the websites that we did design and develop. It can include the audiobooks that can be used in the museum and online as well, giving information about the culture and the heritage to folks that cannot visit in person but are ready to look it up online. The next is online voiceovers, which we're looking for in terms of anything starting from a photograph having an narration which tells what the photograph is going to be. So just trying to make it more interactive throughout. Then again, online presence and marketing. This is something that we are looking, because this is going to be a pilot and this is something that has not been done before in these regions. We're going to look at how to push it out to the world once tourism kicks back up again as well. And we want that once it starts, once the tourism starts, we want to be ready to cater to these these people who want to learn about the history of Ladakh. Creatives for marketing and branding. This is again going to be how can we not just online but offline presence as well will matter in this particular case, where we want to stand out. We want to it needs to be a fusion of the present, of the future, and the past. So that's why it's Asian future, as the term suggests. So what we're looking at is how creative and innovative can we get in terms of the creatives that we have for marketing and branding. And last is going to be the potential of global exhibits. What we're looking at is probable partnerships. If you can refer us to some organization which deals with museums worldwide, and if we can come up with some sort of collaboration or put this example of a museum in remote locations in Ladakh out to the world for a chance to take a peek what it's like, and then probably expand from there. So next up, Jerry, can you move on to the next slide? So these are some slides that we prepared. We had a recent exhibit where there were photographs portrayed of the history. This is the Kargil side of Ladakh. Can you go on to the next one? So this is one way of, and again, there you go. So we have photographs of these artifacts. What you're looking at is how to present them out. So and moving on to the next one. And this is how it is currently. We want to. So this is original in its form, and we want to preserve it the way it is, but also again add technology and innovation in preserving it in a better way, and making it resilient enough to stand and withhold n number of tourists that comes in and sees these kind of museums. So that's what the aim here is. So again, any questions over there? If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Okay. See, there's no questions. I again, I follow the tradition of the raise of hands. We like to see how many of you folks are interested in probably helping out in this particular project and volunteering for this one. So if a raise of hands, guys, just to see who all are interested in this particular project, that'd be great. Oh, that's great. Again, we'll be sending out the Google form as Jaideep and Paras said, and that will have all the information you need to select which all projects you want to be a part of. Thank you.
Thanks, Vishal. So just to summarize, JD piche chalte bhai. So what we're doing is we have finalized 2 or 3, you can say, houses in 2-3 villages, which we feel have the artifacts, and also there is a bit of history around it. So for example, let's take an example of a village near Pangong. So we will not only talk about that village near the Pangong Lake, but about the whole region as a whole, which is called the Changthang. So the idea would be that from GHE's end, we already have a village, we already have the area specified, we have initial funding available, which would go into, doing some kind of documentation or purchasing some technology. What we would need is how do we make this bigger, or what is the limits we need to set around the museum? Because eventually, if people come to area and they have no idea about the culture and history and what happened in this area, or was it part of Silk Route, what was Silk Route all about, then it makes no sense. So I think staying in a homestay and then going in the evening and going to a museum and spending some time there and having some local food and cuisine with the village ladies, and then also trying to understand in your own language if possible, that would be great. So whatever points we listed there, like helping in the technology, helping in drafting how it should look like, can we have something like ladakhmuseum.com where whatever museum we start setting up, we kind of put that under that banner. So again, a new project, and we need support on that, just to make sure the awareness of these areas are more prominent. Yes, and the last one, which probably would be exciting in these times, you may want to look at it, is Imetra. Jaideep, next one, please. Yeah, so this is something we're actually working out right now. We've kind of named a system called Demetra. It's called the Destination Monitoring System. And the reason we have done this is because we're looking at certain projects where we want to set up technologies for the remote areas, which can be used so that we can actually identify or screen a traveler coming in. So not only for a traveler, but also for the local villages in this area. So this is an ongoing project at GHE, but we feel that there could be a lot of scope where we can involve you, because in this lockdown, the concept paper has been finalized, the scope has been defined, but we need now support in terms of the applications and the real hardware technology. So this is mainly for people who may want to, have an application idea, or who may want to put their hands dirty in coding or creating a software for this. So if you go further, next slide, Jaideep. So if you look at this one, this gives you an idea. The system will be an embedded system, and this will have multiple parameters connected to it. So right from, getting, so if a traveler comes to a homestay, you basically would like to know the temperature of the traveler, along with the ECG and probably the blood pressure and the heart rate. It probably gives an indication how fit or how ill that person is. And based on that, there is a flow chart or an SOP we're designing, which will send them to the nearest medical center, or will isolate that traveler from the rest of the house. Because if it gets into homestay and is not well, that becomes an issue, because we don't see any vaccine coming in soon. So we feel actually trying to measure parameters in a remote area would be very beneficial. And why we put other parameters as well? Because the same system can act as a telemedicine system for the remote community. So now that you have access and you can transfer data from these instruments into the system, then basically it will help you measure data and also provide this data as a record for the village in terms of the senior citizens, or showing it to a hospital if anyone faces an emergency in the area. So if you go to the next slide, JD, you will actually see the list of the parameters in addition to the temperature and blood pressure you can actually measure. And this is all very simple, because eventually the system we're trying to develop, it basically needs to communicate with an instrument, log the data, and then send it across, or probably display it real time at that very time and the screen, so that the person who is handling it gets to know, okay, I'm not well. And this also is very nice, because this way the traveler also feels. And Manjari, you need to go on mute. And this also gives the confidence to the traveler that if they're doing it for me, they may do it for someone else as well. So that means the area is very secure. And the idea is not to record the medical parameters, but the idea is only if the data or the parameters shoot above an abnormal limit, it should be able to tell you. So in principle, the system is tested. There are a few folks who are designing the system in US for us, next to Seattle. But it would be great to have more hands on the deck to help us with more ideas on this. Next slide, Jadi. In addition to monitoring, now that we already have an embedded system, we also want to connect other senses to the system. So for example, if you're in a house, suppose you are screen well, you enter a homestay, but you know that you need to wash your hands. So that means there is a water being consumed at a very high level in this area. So with this area, there's a lot of scarcity of water, and you don't want to consume the water at a very abnormal rate. So it would be great to have an indication of how much water is available and how much water is being consumed. What is the quality water, what you're drinking? Is there waste which is being generated? How is the air quality of the room? Is there a is there a CO2, kind of a space heating system, which we call Bukhari, is available? So is the air quality good or bad? I want to bike out tomorrow. What are the predictions of the weather conditions? I want to plant something in my greenhouse. How is the soil moisture? Should I put my samplings, or first I need to create a good moisture level? So the idea is, can the same system, in addition to the health benefits, can it also become a destination monitoring system and make it a more sustainable, destination in terms of real-time monitoring of all the natural resources of the data? As we all know that in the areas in the mountains, the resources are limited. So it would be great to see them, and only when you see them, you believe it. So I think that is another addition we want to put this into the system. So that's what the Demetra is all about. Do we have a next slide? So yeah, so where we are currently, we are on the initial stage of deciding the technology. When I say technology, if there's an embedded board, which anyone has an idea of, we are currently using Raspberry Pi. We know that it's not the right board for deployment, it's only for prototypes. But in some areas it has worked well, especially the ones we have deployed in the areas, the villages, for creating an offline server. We are currently finding a coder and a developer who could help us design the system in a very fast manner, because we don't want to wait before things goes out of this thing. So we need a coder and developer for Raspberry Pi, and we're looking at some prototype timeline. So what we are currently needing is, next slide, JD, is we're looking at someone who knows how to code on RPI, which stands for Raspberry Pi, both backend as well as the front end, which is user interface. Anyone who can integrate sensors. Of course, we have the knowledge for it. But having said that, because of the limited resources we have in India, someone who's outside India probably would be able to help integrate sensors and defining a scope of the system. So we have understood that it can be used for health and monitoring the natural resources of the area. If there's any other more thoughts you want to say, hey, can it measure this? We should help it measure that. Then it becomes more applicable for multiple benefits. So that's the application area. So for non-technical people who want to be involved in this project, it's just a brainstorming in helping us design if there is anything we can do more on top of just monitoring it. For an example, we're trying to see if the system can work as a traveler tracking system, which means a person who has come to the homestay and he checks in, and after he's checked out, in the next 14 days, if there's any infection he sees, he just tells us, and then we tell all the people who have come to that homestay in the over 14 days that, hey, be careful, there was someone there. So trying to use the system as a tracking system as well. Let's see how that can. So we are looking for applications and we're looking for some designer, basically a coder. I think the system is well designed. It's already theoretically and we feel and technically it is already feasible. But it would be great to have any thoughts on that. So this is the 3 applications we have kind of figured out. JD, next slide, please. Which is basically a homestay, basically homestay scope, homestay modeling, I would say. Second would be museums, try and get the cultural heritage of these areas out. And mind you, this is just not Ladakh. Ladakh itself has 10 tribes within it. It has the Pashmina, goat people, the shepherds. It has the Silk Route, the traders. It has the warrior sects. And everyone has been part of the civilization of the world in some part or the other. So some way or the other. So it would be great to have that. And the last is the technology bit, which is the Raspberry Pi based system. So the next step would be, we'll be sharing a Google form with you on these 3 systems, on these 3 projects. We would want you to submit your interest. We would ideally want everyone to have 1 project, but in case you would like to take 2, you can do that. And then we'll just connect with you to understand if there is any overlapping skill you have, which goes for multiple projects. Once you submit your project, we'll connect you with the specific person from our team, the single point of contact, and he will do a joint team session. So all these points which have been mentioned here will be discussed and openly put out in very detailed manner from ours, what is the need we require, and then it can be brainstorming for probably half an hour. And then with the team, it can decide who owns what, and then we can set timelines and the final scope of the project. This is what we currently looking at, and just to be very sure that we are anyways going ahead with all these projects. So it's not that in case you feel you put in an effort, nothing will happen. No, we are anyways going ahead with projects. These are live projects. So if you think you can be part of it, it will be really awesome. And this will also help you understand more about what is the GHE's mission and vision going forward. And it would be great to have the alumni part of the mission and vision of GHE. So every day, single day in, day out, we are working hard on making these happen. And it would be great to have your support in whatever capacity it can be. So it's not mandatory, but to have you come on the call and listen to us for 40 minutes is really incredible. And thank you so much for that. Any final words from any of our team members, Jaideep, Gaurav, Manjari?
I think thank you so much, Paras and Vishal, for sharing the overview. And again, guys, the whole idea is, like we mentioned, we want to strengthen and build on whatever infrastructure has already been put into these communities and take them to the next level. And many of you during the expeditions have always asked us, you know, what are you doing about healthcare and what are you doing about medical? So this is a step towards that direction, you know, where we are trying to make these communities resilient, so that as tourism opens and as people start coming, you know, they get an environment that is safe. The communities feel safe in welcoming these people to these remote destinations. And at the same time, I think one thing that we would like to further add beyond this is, as part of our initiative, we are also looking at powering up the medical health centers using solar power. So it's sort of now encompassing the entire ambit of impact. Start with energy access, set up digital education centers, set up livelihood generation through homestays, make communities resilient using technology, and then ultimately, you know, provide them with access to healthcare. So that's the overall ambit of the project.
Thanks, Jaideep. This is nice. Would be great to hear from you guys. In case you have any thoughts on the things we have discussed right now.
I think it's a fantastic project. I mean, I love the idea of adding the healthcare part to what you are already doing. And I think that both the three projects are all very, very good. So really very supportive about what you're doing. So I'm glad to try to contribute to this.
Thank you, Sylvia. That's nice. That's good. Anyone else? Anyone has any other comments of anything you think that we may want to tweak a bit or add something more to these projects in case you feel that also is relevant?
So Paras, I was Christian here.
Yeah, man.
What is the, I mean, I love it, great projects, but it does sound quite complex. And I was wondering, how does it how does it sort of, you know, combine and connect to like a greater, bigger picture, a bigger whole, so to say, like a whole connected program?
So the idea here is to treat them as 3 individual programs, but they all overlap on something which is the community. So for us, Mountain Homestays is definitely a model, a sustainable business model, which we are trying to, as I mentioned to you, we're trying to figure out whether it's going to be a purely travel-oriented model or it's going to be a more travel and sustainable research-based model. That is what the team would decide. So the interesting thing is, think of it like a business unit, and you are a part of it as trying to see what direction it's going to take. And there are already a lot of partners of Mountain Homestays, from United Nations to Mountain Partnerships to the World Travel and Tourism Council to IEEE. So whenever we decide to make this bigger, we can always do that, but we're trying to create the foundation strong. And that is where we want to get an idea of the direction we are in. That's the Mountain Homestays project. The museums is the culture. We felt it has its own domain itself, with the culture and heritage coming out of these areas recently, and no one was been talking about it. But since the last 1 year, there has been few festivals which has displayed that, and there has been a huge response to that. And we have felt that people now want to understand more of the area and then just go do point and shoot. It's very travel oriented stuff I'm saying, but also it's very specific to India and Asia. There has been recently a more thought going towards doing stuff in art and history than just engineering and medical sciences, which is also very important. So that also develops, or you can say it creates the scientific or the cultural temper among the youth in that area. And lastly, the technology bit, I think anyone else, the Emirates have already started taking swabs of the passengers before they take a flight. But what happens to these remote communities? And we feel that now everyone is talking about people going to do domestic travel more. International travel is going to take some time. And even in domestic tourism, it's going to be more private vehicle owned tourism, where people take their own car, go to nearby weekends, and there won't be any trains or flights being used for some time now. And they would like to go to destinations which are a bit lesser crowded and which has more remoteness, more clean air and stuff. So that is where I think these communities will anyways have a surge of travelers coming in. So we want to make them prepared, as well as we feel it's the right time for them to showcase their lifestyle, so that people understand that it's not about staying in air-conditioned room. Well, it is. It definitely helps in these areas. I myself is in Gurgaon in Delhi, and frankly, I haven't been using my air condition now. It's still April now, and we start using it in the mid of May and mid of March. So the air definitely has got much more cleaner. So now that for some reason, due to this crisis, we are seeing the good part of Earth. So how can we keep maintaining that? And that is something experiencing this community. So I probably have given you a bit of an idea of how we are looking at these 3 projects, on a longer term. Does that help, Christian?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I think it's great. I think it really builds on each other as well. I mean, the homestays are going to get much more traffic if there is a lot of cultural content there as well. And honestly, never really thought about, putting a lot of effort in protecting the cultural heritage of those regions, because I guess they're so vulnerable. They don't really have any time or resources to do it themselves. So I think it's a great effort.
Right. Thanks, man.
Hey, Paris, just a thought. This is Vikrant. While you have, the healthcare model kind of in my realm of things, it makes me think of, could we possibly think of maybe cultural dissemination model or a well-being model, knowing that these communities often are remote, marginalized, and when they come out in the world, they might find themselves either, I don't want to say shorthanded, but maybe handicapped in how to operate in the larger, bigger world. But maybe some of the practices there could help.
Right. I think, yeah, that's again something, for example, we shared last time. So the kind of agriculture they practice is very interesting, and the way they use the greenhouses and the kind of manure they use. I think that is another project which I was saying, that the research project of homestays is not about just home. It's about, I would say, a kind of a village, understanding the Himalayan village. So we have so much of documentation available, but we hardly get to disseminate that among our people. So I think in the next call, the people interested for the homestays project, we can even share the practices or what they are doing, so that then you can probably pick and choose something you feel makes sense to the urban world as well, and vice versa. So, and at our end, we are doing our bit in trying to keep them informed, in trying to show them. So there is about, how do you practice high altitude farming? So we're trying to do that as well through the experts available in those areas.
Right.
So more ideas would be more than welcome, actually. Thanks. That's great, guys. Awesome. Anyone else? I see everyone is still there, but any final thoughts? These are good points coming in. If anyone has a question on why we are doing this, and or a blunt question, feel free to ask us. No worries.
And Paras, have you also thought about connecting students to several of these projects through like, graduation projects or theses related projects where they study some of the stuff?
So interestingly, that's a nice thing you have opened up, opening up the Pandora box for us, Christian. The students basically, of course, we have been doing few expeditions last year with the school students from India as well as abroad. But at the same time, the local students, what we're doing right now is, in addition to the project on healthcare, we are also setting up, or you can say strengthening up the physical health centers. We call them PHC in India. So every 5 villages will have one medical center, or there are small medical centers in every village. So we're trying to see if we can power them up with solar and provide them with few, medical equipments which are not very complex. Someone like a medical assistant can run, something like an autoclave or sterilizer or a vaccine carrier or refrigerator, and then try and involve the kids in trying to set them up. They would be, so a lot of kids end up doing travel and tourism in Ladakh. So, exposing them to the agriculture part, as I was telling you earlier, in greenhouse, the microgrids part is already being involved. So a lot of schools in Ladakh, where we do our CSR projects, they come along with us and they set up the microgrids in some of the villages, and these kids are 10th grade. Now we're trying to see if they can set up the healthcare centers and even try and measure heart rate or a blood pressure. Because, in terms of emergency, it's like this. You need someone who knows how to run this show. And it may end up developing a scientific temper. Someone may just want to be a doctor. So at the end of the day, if you don't have doctors in that area, that won't make any sense. So I think doing all these projects, and as you were saying, Christian, that's part of the game as well, right? I mean, once these things go on the ground, there's automatically schools. We have almost 23 schools connected to us. Not many, but I think they're still good enough in all different parts, where we ask the students to come and be part of the project. So that is definitely part of the whole thing. But we haven't thought about it right now for these projects as of now, because we still feel once into the scope, then we'll involve them.
I think it's great. I think with this, you can really uplift that whole region. I think that's like a mammoth task, and if you can pull it off, that's glory forever, I guess.
Yeah, that's correct. Absolutely. Okay. I think it's been a great session, and in case anyone else has anything else to speak or comment or share, would be great. But this is just a call specific to these projects, and probably in the next half an hour maximum, we'll share a Google form with you. And if you could select that, that would be great, because then you can immediately form the team. Because I mentioned to you, these are live projects, so nothing is going out of whatever we contribute here. So it's going to everything is going to be value at the end of the day. So whatever you can contribute in terms of your skill, in terms of your ability, would be great. And if there is any contribution we're getting in addition to this group, we'll be happy to share that as well with you, so that we want to be transparent in terms of wherever we are contributing. Just to give you an idea, Rohan is on the call as well. He works in Facebook, and he has been contributing some credits as part of the Facebook ads we have been running. So for Mountain Homestays, he has agreed to that for last month. We haven't run any ad because we want to make sure that whenever we run it, there are people to see it, not at this time. So thank you, Ron. So some contribution on those end, we'll definitely be open to share with you guys.
That's great.
Great. Okay, Jaideep, your final thought. You start, you end.
Nothing further to add. I think it's really great to see the engagement from everyone and the commitment. I think that's the main word here. Everyone is committed towards enabling what we are doing here for these communities. And, it sort of reflects back to the promise that you make when you're there with the communities, right? When the lights were electrified and, when you were having that dance with the villagers, many of you said, what can we do more for these communities? What beyond lights? So I think this is a great way to sort of connect back again with those villages and those people that are so remote off, but can really be empowered in a great manner using some of the basic tools and technologies. So thank you so much, everyone, for all your interest in really taking this forward with us and going ahead step to step with us in this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It was nice, and have a nice weekend ahead. Sorry to disturb you on Saturday. We always do that, and we love doing that. See you from us soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.